Here is my 5-step lower back pain treatment plan. We're going to look at the 5 stages or the 5 components or the 5 steps that I use to help people overcome their lower back pain, be it online or be it face to face. So first of all, we look at and try and identify causes of pain. Then we look at the hip range of movement, hip trigger points, the lower back itself, and the core strength and stability. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify where the pain is coming from. Are there any mechanical aspects of it? And are there any soft tissue aspects of it? So once we've identified all of that, we can then start putting the plan together based on this information that we've gained. If you are struggling and suffering with lower back pain and you'd like some help, just click the link below and you'll go through to my online consultation and coaching page. Enter your details. This part is free. Enter your details, answer the questions in the questionnaire. I'll then send you a lower back pain report about how I can help. If you're happy to proceed, well, there's no obligation to, but if you are happy to proceed, then we can get you booked in for your consultation, get you in, get the treatment plan written up for you based on what I'm going to talk about today, and then you've then got 2 weeks of coaching afterwards to get it implemented and get you on the road to recovery. Step 1 is identifying causes of pain. If we can identify causes of pain, we can identify ways to keep you pain-free. So it's not limited to what's on the screen here, but we look at things like sitting, standing, lifting. Are there elements of fatigue that are in your lower back that need to be addressed? So it's not necessarily just that we're looking at sitting posture, as is written here. We're also looking at sitting duration with sitting posture. So it could be one, it could be the other, it could be both. We look at lifting technique. We look at pain duration. We look at pain frequency. All these different types of things. When it all gets put together and we can see it in one sort of one place from the questionnaires that you're going to answer, then it's much easier to make evaluations and judgments about what direction we need to take the treatment plan in. Once you've answered those questions, we started identifying some causes of the pain. Then we can start to move around the different areas of the body and the tissues of the body to start trying to get some mechanical feedback, not just let's just say perceptual feedback and subjective feedback from you writing down the answers, but also get some sort of mechanical feedback so we are then able to make better evaluations of the pain that you're in. So once you're booked in for your consultation, this is where you get to. So I can send you all this online, all online videos. I talk you through it and then you again just send me the information. So first of all, hip range of movement. Now, this is not just because you've got tight hips, it doesn't mean that it's causing your pain. It can contribute to it. It might not be contributing to it, because flexible hips can contribute in a similar sort of way because there's instability there. Instability in the hip can cause instability in the lower back, and it all goes, it can all follow that sort of cascade. But what we have to identify is all of these different aspects together. So hip range of movement, we're looking at simple things like hip internal rotation, as you can see here. So that's how far the leg can go that way. And then external rotation, which is how far the leg can go that way. So if we're seeing internal rotation very limited, but external rotation very free, then we've got imbalance in the hip. That's something that would need to be addressed, because what we need is healthy hips to be able to give our lower back the best chance of recovery. Tight hips are going to be can be a problem, and again, very loose hips can be a problem. We would need to treat them in a different way, but if we can identify what they are they tight, are they imbalanced, are they very loose, we need to be able to get that sort of information to help us understand what type of stretches to do, what type of exercises to do, what type of everyday activities to be thinking about. So not only do we look at hip range of movement, we do that in 2 ways. One is passive and one is active. And again, we do this for very specific reasons, because if we've got one and not the other, then it could be telling us that there's instability in the hip, and they may have good range of movement, but they just aren't stable. So we need to identify this, and that can be shown up in different ways. But again, if we can identify that, it's going to give us a much better opportunity to overcome your lower back pain. Next are hip trigger points. Now, trigger points are essentially little tiny knots in muscle fibers. And a way we can identify them is by palpating, which is just, put in lay terms, basically you just get a thumb and you just sort of push it in, move it around, and feel for tenderness. Now again, this is all in videos. If you were there with me face to face, I would be doing this myself. But essentially why we do this is, as you can see here, there's a trigger point in the side of the hip, and what happens is when that trigger point becomes activated, you get pain in the sort of the center of the back, at the base of the spine. There's another one slightly inside of that, but this time the pain can go into the buttock and sort of down the side of the leg. So we need to identify these types of trigger points because they could be contributing to the problem. It could be that it's coming from a nerve, it could be coming from a disc, but it could be coming from a hip trigger point. But if we don't do something like this, it's going to be hard for us to treat the problem if we're going after the wrong tissue or the wrong movement or the wrong posture or whatever it is. So if we can identify these now, it's going to be much easier to get there further down the line. Next is the lower back. So we need to look at the lower back and what that's doing. So this will help us identify, is it disc? Is it nerve? Is it facet joint? Is it muscular? Facet joints you'll find at the back of the spine. Discs you'll find in between here, and we can identify if it's irritating a nerve. Again, we put this together with the hip trigger points. We look at the symptoms that you're experiencing. We look at the hips, obviously the trigger points there. We look at the lower back. So we've got all these different pieces of the puzzle that need to come together that give us our picture. It's very hard for me to say that it's that or it's that. What we're looking at is it's pointing in this direction, or it looks like that is the problem, but this is contributing to it. So we need to sort the hips out before we can address what's happening at the back. So it's a much different sort of process than do this exercise and do that exercise, because all of this informs what the stretches are, what the exercises are, what the postures are, what the duration of the exercise is, what the duration of the posture is, so on and so forth. So all the different variables that we've talked about, that we've identified, will become more clear when we look at the lower back, the hips, and the hip range of movement. And then finally, is it the core strength? Is it core stability? Is it core endurance? So again, we would get you into these positions. This is testing for, first of all, gluteal endurance. So it's just a case of holding the posture, but then lifting a leg up. How does your hip stabilize when it goes from two legs to one leg? And it's the same here. When we go into the hand plank, how does your core and hip stabilize when we go from both arms down to just one arm, when we lift up into this position? So we're looking for all these different mechanisms and reactions by the body to see where the problems lie. Because you may have very tight hips but a very strong core. You may have a very weak core but very mobile hips. So we need to know what direction we need to take the exercise. Do we need to put our focus on the core? Do we need to put our focus on the hips? Do we need to put our focus on the exercises, the stretches, the everyday movements? But we can't understand that until we do this sort of problem, or this sort of process. So if we go through this sort of process, we can help identify what the problem is. Once we've then sorted what the problem is, we can then start to solve that problem. And that's exactly what my consultation and coaching is all about. It's all about trying to identify where the problem's coming from. Is it from the core? Is it from the back? Is it from the hips? Is it the trigger points in the hip? Is it the range of movement of the hips? Is it just you're sitting too much and you need to not sit as much? Simple things like that. That will all come through the report. As I've mentioned, I'll then put some feedback in about how I can help, and is your am I able to help your lower back pain? And then what we can do is once you're booked in, I can put you through all these online assessments, and then we can get together for the online consultation and get this plan put through. And with 2 weeks of support, coaching or coaching support, we can then get it implemented, get it implemented, and get it integrated, so you can get on the road to recovery. So hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully you found it useful, and if you're suffering with lower back pain, just click the link below, and I look forward to working with you in the future.